GM, everyone. I got an exciting guest here on Crypto Mondays Global on the scene. So we're on the scene here at COP28. Something happened that's really special, and it's a historical moment, and Elliot is the man who made it happen. Friends that are not in Bitcoin or crypto are all saying that. I don't like that because it ruins the environment. Well, guess what? These are the guys that are changing that narrative to the truth, and he's going to explain that in a second. But think about where he's at. So he's at the place, the only place potentially that could change the minds of the policymakers, of the big corporates, of the people that could take Bitcoin on into the future and crypto into the future. So Elliot's a very important figure. You might not have heard of him. You know why? Because he's been working his ass off to get you guys Bitcoin into the system. So congratulations on this delegation, Elliot. And tell us, I want to go to your story in a minute, but since I started with the Bitcoin delegation thing, go ahead and just tell us what happened. Tell us, who were you representing? What happened, and how did it go?
Sure. And thank you, so much for talking to me today. As you pointed out, COP, or the Conference of Parties, is the annual United Nations Climate Change Conference where world leaders, industry leaders all get together and they coordinate efforts to address climate change. Now, also very historic, this is the first time ever, so out of the first 28 COPs, this is the first time ever that there is a delegation of Bitcoin companies that have attended, that have spoken, met with delegates, met with industry leaders here on the ground to talk about Bitcoin and to dispel some of these confusing or misleading narratives around Bitcoin. The way I see it is that even though this is a small delegation of a couple of companies, including Hut8, or I should say the new Hut8 after their recent merger with US Bitcoin.
They're from Canada?
They're from Canada. Really amazing Bitcoin company, Bitcoin mining company led by Jamie Leverton.
I was supposed to interview her today, but I got him, so he's better.
So no, I'm joking. I don't know about that. You got shortchanged there.
We missed each other. But so you had Hut8.
There was Coinbase Asset Management. We had representation from Marcel Kasimovich, who was their deputy CIO. We also had a Bitcoin miner called Giga Energy, which is mitigating methane emissions from the oil and gas sector using Bitcoin. We also had our CEO, Brad, who participated in the panel. Honorable mention also to BitDeer, which is also one of the largest publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies.
And by the way, that's in Bhutan, and we're going to have them on Crypto Mondays Global. So pay attention, make sure to like and subscribe, because they have been using hydropower over there in Bhutan to mine Bitcoin and in a dilapidated place. And that helped them during the pandemic when the tourism was zero, because their economy relies on tourism. So can't wait for that interview. Make sure to like and subscribe. So you had an amazing international delegation, people that are working on the environment, people that have clean Bitcoin. You know Tom Friend?
I don't know Tom Friend.
He was doing hydroelectric powered Bitcoin mining since the old days.
He's like an OG hydro miner.
Yeah, and Vinay Gupta also was on been a big environmental.
So the message really that we came this year, because this is the inaugural delegation of these companies to COP, we're not trying to convince anybody of anything. We brought leaders in the space so that they could ask questions. They could get people to be more curious rather than judgmental. We wanted people to come and say, hey, I've never seen a Bitcoin miner before. I have no idea what this technology is. I have no idea what it does. We wanted them to come in and at least open their horizons a little bit. Future COPs, the delegation is going to grow. We're going to be able to show them more use cases, for example, in Bhutan, where you can actually support the grid, support the hydro assets. But really, in my personal opinion, and helping to organize this delegation, with the Sustainable Bitcoin Protocol team, we recognize that Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining is actually potentially a really powerful climate technology. So we don't want the world leaders or the industry leaders to miss out on the opportunity of using it to drive the energy transition.
No, that's a real salesman, man.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: he's like, but you said a smart thing in general. I'm going to just take that forward. One, they're not trying to convince people that don't even know what the technology is, right? And so I'm sure Elliot's welcome at Thanksgiving dinner when he's back. He's from the States, and so there's, that's what I hear is like, don't run down my throat with Bitcoin at Thanksgiving dinner. Can we talk about football? And so you took a more soft approach to alert people. And then you just said something very interesting to me, man. You said, wait a second, Bitcoin is an opportunity for environmental protection okay.
In fact, I think
sustainable Bitcoin.
I think Bitcoin could be one of the most important climate technologies of this century.
Okay, go ahead. No, man.
It's a advanced statement. Yeah, no worries. And I think usually when you're talking to groups that care about the planet, which is most people, they care about the environment, they care about the planet, they're looking for solutions, instead of saying like, here, you should use my thing, you should agree with me. I first try to identify, or we first try to identify, what is it they care about? What problems are they facing in the climate space? And then how do we fit in? So for example, if I'm talking to an energy company, right, or a grid operator, or even a policymaker, I'm not going to say, hey, like Bitcoin's amazing, you should use it, and like, God be with you. Instead, what I'm going to ask is, hey, like, what challenges are you seeing in the energy space? For example, a power company might say, you know what, we've built out a lot of renewable capacity, which is great, but because we can't control when the sun shines and when the wind blows, we're actually having a lot of like, demand side management problems. We don't have a flexible buyer of power that can actually manage, this supply and demand imbalance. We could, in theory, deploy batteries, but those are expensive. So then I say to them, what if you had a machine, a computer, that was the size of a shoebox, that you can make as big or as small as possible, that monetized electricity into a globally liquid currency in a way that was totally flexible, interruptible, and location agnostic? Like, would that work? And 10 out of 10 times they're like, wow, that would be amazing.
Can I get one tomorrow?
If only somebody could invent such a technology. And that's actually what brought me to Bitcoin. It's like,
black box.
Yeah, no, it's literally a computer that transmits the value of electricity across space and time. And as soon as a grid operator, a power, or anybody who's in the energy space, as soon as they get that, it's done. They're convinced, right? As long as they can kind of separate like the FUD or the misconceptions that they already have. If you find somebody new who has not formed an opinion yet, and you present that one fact to them, they draw their own conclusions.
So give me the summary of those main key benefits that you said.
Yeah.
Here you have a black box that
it turns electricity into money in a way that's interruptible, location agnostic, and flexible. And I can explain that. So if you have a buyer of electricity, say a factory or a building, right? Flexible means that you can ramp up and down. Yeah, no worries. Flexible means that like if I want to buy more electricity or less electricity, I can go up and down pretty quickly. So for example, like a factory is not very flexible. If I need to turn down a factory in order to provide more electricity to other consumers, that could take days or weeks. It's hard to bring it back up again. It's not very flexible. Now, interruptible means that I can totally turn off some kind of buyer of electricity as needed. Let's say there's a storm, right? I'm from New York. Let's say there's a winter storm. Sometimes businesses can offer to shut down their power. They can turn off their electricity demand. And now more electricity is available to buyers on the grid, right? And then the third piece is what's called location agnosticism, meaning I can actually buy electricity anywhere where there's internet access.
Right. And this is going to challenge the idea of the mining being necessarily using a lot of oil power or anything, because you can use renewables for Bitcoin. For example, solar power in the middle of the desert, without even needing to have human life live there or thrive. Yeah. So it's in a way you can mine Bitcoin anywhere. That's how they're doing in Bhutan with the hydropower.
In the middle of the mountain. Location indifferent.
Location indifferent is a good way to think about that for Yeah, us who
for
don't.
a general audience.
yeah,
and,
great.
And that has a couple of really, really important implications. So for one, as you said, it doesn't matter where you locate it. It doesn't have to be near a population center where traditionally you would have to do that. So for example, in West Texas, where there's a ton of excess renewable capacity, it's really windy, it's really sunny, they have all of this excess electricity that actually gets negatively priced sometimes, like you have to pay people to buy electricity. These Bitcoin miners can fly out there, there's nothing there, or that, it's not that there's nothing there, but there's no infrastructure there, and they'll just go on site and buy that electricity. Now, the other really, really interesting implication of this is that you can go out and find waste energy sources wherever they are, monetize them into Bitcoin, including sources of energy that are polluting. So this year, COP28 is considered to be the methane COP. A lot of people are saying this
Cow
is
fart cop.
the cow fart COP. So cow farts are really, agriculture, landfills, so like, garbage dumps, and then the oil and gas sector are the three largest sources of methane.
Now, hold on a second, just before you go to the next bit. Methane is obviously, methane is more damaging to the environment, much more damaging to the environment than carbon. Everybody talk about decarbonization and carbon credits and all these other things, and you'll see some of our things about carbon credits. But tell us just how damaging methane is, and then how significant. Rope that in with the significance of these waste products and methane-producing products that could be turned into Bitcoin.
Absolutely, yeah. So methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. I mean, the estimates vary, but it's orders of magnitude worse for the planet, and the warming potential is on a lower time horizon, meaning the more that we can mitigate methane today is going to have a much larger impact on warming tomorrow. So even like the Environmental Defense Fund, the United Nations, World Bank, they all agree the single greatest lever that we have to slowing climate change is mitigating methane emissions. And as I was saying, the three largest sources of methane are from landfills, oil and gas sector, and agriculture, cow farts, things like that.
Right.
Or cow burps, actually. It's not cow farts, it's cow burps. Unimportant distinction. But basically, these are all sources of methane that are terrible for the environment, and it's also energy, right? Methane is CH4. It's a gas that can also be combusted, turned into CO2, and produce energy. Now, a lot of these sources of methane are what's called stranded, meaning instead of being able to combust it, on site and send it to market, there's no way to transmit the value of that electricity, right? You can't really send the methane to a pipeline. It's just being emitted into the atmosphere. Now, because Bitcoin mining is totally location agnostic, I know people that are trying to mine Bitcoin at the bottom of the ocean. I know somebody who's trying to mine it from space. As long as you have internet, you can mine Bitcoin. So what they're doing is for example, there's a company called Crusoe or Giga Energy, and what they're doing is they go out into the oil and gas fields. They find these sources of methane, which are being flared, meaning they're being burnt off and are very inefficient. They can put a Bitcoin miner on top of the well where this methane is coming from. They combust it with a 99.99% efficiency and eliminating those methane emissions. And then you could also do the same thing for landfills. You can find, hey, this is methane coming out of landfills. And essentially,
wastewater resources.
Wastewater. So essentially what you're doing is you're turning this trash into a valuable global commodity, and it's paying for the mitigation of this methane. And again, right now, there are very few avenues to eliminate these methane emissions. Bitcoin mining, as far as I can see, is the #1 solution for methane. But we're so early. Part of the reason why we're here, and we were here with a company called Giga Energy, we want to show all these organizations that all these methane emissions that are so terrible for the planet can be turned into digital gold.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, wow. Yeah, I wonder if that works with human farts as well.
So I'm sure it does.
Human farts create methane?
They do, but very, very little. I think the methane coming from human flatulence is probably 1,000th of 1% of global methane.
Not
But
after that lunch, mate.
maybe it's more. I don't know. If you're me, then maybe it's a little higher than that.
Okay,
But
so that's why you said Bitcoin could be a great producer, because it also is a store of value, because it also has basically, it doesn't inflate, it's deflationary.
Yeah.
Obviously, people do value it, and it can be a tradable currency, but it's slow. Aren't there better blockchains and things like that? And who needs to even have this discussion about creating Bitcoin mining facilities and stuff like that when we have proof of stake? I mean, why Bitcoin?
Sure.
Because other than we can take Michael Saylor's farts and turn them into
Bitcoin.
Carbon.
Listen, I think if Michael Saylor could turn his farts into Bitcoin, he probably would.
I think so.
He probably would. The capex on that might not be worth it.
Okay,
But
startup founders, now you got an idea for the new startup, right?
Yeah.
Elliot's just given to you a gold mine, right?
So,
But why
but-
Bitcoin?
so
Why is it necessary to do
why
all this
Bitcoin?
kind of stuff with wastewater and
Absolutely.
Methane and stuff like that? Why don't we just use a zero carbon producing proof of stake system?
So there's a couple of answers to that
I see.
question, right? But first is separating the conversation about Bitcoin and energy from the conversation about like what is the actual value of Bitcoin, right? Because at the end of the day, if you believe that Bitcoin has zero value, then even spending a kilowatt hour of electricity to mine Bitcoin is a waste, right? If you say I have zero value for Bitcoin, I would rather use that kilowatt hour to store my selfies on the cloud or have Amazon Web Services or turn on a light, right? Like electricity is fully fungible, and we decide as a society what its value is. Now, separating like all of the actual properties of Bitcoin, as a monetary technology,
Right.
just thinking about it from the energy side, everything we were just talking about let's put that over here for a
Put
moment.
that to the side.
Now, why Bitcoin? First of all, Bitcoin is the first and biggest cryptocurrency for a reason. It's the only completely decentralized monetary network, totally permissionless, assuming you have internet, which we can talk about.
Right.
It's the totally permissionless in the sense that there's no gatekeep, right? Like Bitcoin is totally open source, permissionless, monetary network. There's a reason why it hasn't been hacked. When we talk about blockchains and proof of stake, proof of work, and kind of these different positives and negatives or trade-offs, and I do a lot of this work with policymakers, environmental groups, who their first question is, why don't we move Bitcoin to proof of stake, right? So for one is, full stop, I don't think it's technically possible, right?
Yeah.
To move Bitcoin to proof of stake, I mean,
Well, you would have to have consensus of all of everything.
yeah, but I mean, at COP, we try to have consensus on climate, and we can't even get that. How are we gonna get this other consensus?
You get these countries together to agree on anything, but
then the question about what's the value?
It's philosophical, isn't it? The issue. I mean, I know
to a certain extent, sure, it's
Right.
philosophical,
'Cause
but
energy is something that has a cost.
energy has a cost, and actually,
Whereas my Ethereum
Right.
staking, that doesn't have a cost to the
Right.
environment.
And-
That's the argument.